Hello. So today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different ways to enter a holding pattern. Now if you haven't already seen it, I would recommend checking out my last video on the holding patterns so you can learn the basics of what they are and why they're used. So moving on to entries. I'm going to preface this by saying that I really struggled to get my head around this initially, so if you do as well, do not worry. This is one of the most challenging topics for real-world pilots when they are studying for their instrument ratings, so if it doesn't make sense, again, do not worry. Now, I'm actually going to begin with a quick refresher on VOR navigation because it's going to be quite important later on in the video. So we all know and love our VOR stations, but I want to clarify a couple of key words used when navigating with them. Now remember that when we're navigating, we will be using something called a radial a lot of the time. This is the direction that the plane is away from the VOR station. So in this example, the plane is on a radial of 0.45 degrees away from the VOR. Now it's also good to know the reciprocal direction of the radial, which is the opposite direction. To find this, simply add or subtract 180 degrees from your radial. So in this example, the reciprocal will be 255 degrees. I just wanted to clarify quickly that terminology before we move forwards. Next up, let's have a look at holding patterns in a little more detail. So you know that all holding patterns have a fix, which is the start point, and that planes will fly a racetrack or an oval-shaped route and return back to the fix. There's a few more key parts that I would like to highlight. First are the 2 straight parts of the pattern. When flying towards the fix, this is known as the inbound leg. You are inbound or heading towards the fix. The other straight is known as the outbound leg, where you are flying away from the fix. The inbound leg can also be known as the holding course. Now this is the precise direction of the inbound leg. The other thing I would like to highlight is that holding patterns also have 2 sides. An imaginary line is drawn along the holding course. Now the side that the pattern turns into is known as the holding side, and you may also hear this be called the protected side of the hold. The other side, away from the holding pattern, is simply called the non-holding side or the non-protected side. Okay, so let's finally get to the entry techniques. Now, I mentioned at the start that there were 3 of them, and depending on what direction you're approaching the fix from and what direction the hold course is, will determine which technique you need to use. So let's start with the easiest one, that is the direct entry. The direct entry is very simple. You just need to fly directly to the fix, and then when you pass over it, simply begin your standard rate turn on the hold. That's it. Now there may be times that you're flying a direct entry from an awkward angle, which may make the first turn quite tricky. Now I'm not sure if this is allowed in real life, but to make that first turn easier for myself, I try to intercept the hold course just before I reach the fix, so that I'm lined up with the inbound leg just before I start the hold. Again, I'm not sure if that's allowed in real life or not, but we're flying in the simulator so we can get away with it. The next entry technique is called an offset or a teardrop entry. For this, what you need to do is fly directly to the fix, and then fly at an angle towards the outbound leg. From what I understand, the best way to do this is to fly at an angle of 30 degrees to the reciprocal of the course hold and fly that for 1 minute, which should just about put you at the end of the outbound leg. From there, make a right hand turn and join the inbound leg of the hold. And then once you get back to the fix, begin flying the hold normally from there. And then finally, the last entry we have is the parallel entry. So for this technique, our initial action again is to fly directly to the fix. As we pass over the fix, we would need to fly the reciprocal of the hold course for 1 minute. And then once that minute has passed, you need to turn onto the holding side of the pattern and then approach the fix at approximately a 30-degree angle before beginning the hold. And you'll notice that this is pretty much a reverse of the offset entry technique. Okay, so hopefully now you have a good idea of how to fly each entry technique, but how do we figure out which technique we need to use? Now there's a couple of methods out there, but the easiest I found was something called the pod method. Let's take a look at it. The airspace around a holding pattern fix can be divided into 3 sectors, like so. Now it looks like a little pie chart, but the sectors are quite easy to figure out. You can start off with an upside down T, and then tilt the horizontal line by 20 degrees, like so. Now I said that this is called the pod method because the sectors are arranged P, O, D. So you have your parallel entry in the top left, your offset entry in the top right, and your direct entry in the bottom. So how do we apply this to actually flying the plane? Well, there's a cool little trick that you can use in the cockpit. If you take your right hand and make this shape with your fingers, you can just about recreate this little pie chart diagram. Now, I'm going to superimpose the diagram over my hand here so you can see how it all lines up. You can see that the vertical line of the chart lines up with your index finger, and if you draw a line between your thumb and your little finger, then that gives you the angled horizontal line there. Now, to show you how to actually apply this to actually flying, it's going to be best for me to jump into the plane and give you a demonstration. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you where I'll be flying first of all. So I'm going to be referring to this approach chart for Inverness Airport, which has this holding pattern on it. Now the fix for this holding pattern is the Inverness VOR station, and all I've done to set this flight up is simply take off and head north. So let's jump in the plane now and see how we can get back into this holding pattern. Okay, and here we are in the plane. Now, the first thing I need to do is figure out where am I in relation to the fix. So remember, looking at the chart, the fix that we're going to be using is the Inverness VOR station. So what I can do is I can find out where I am in relation to that VOR station by figuring out which radial I'm on. And I need to do it quickly because there's a mountain up ahead. So what I'm going to do is tune into the Inverness VOR. I've already kind of set this up in advance. And then just spin this round. Okay, so I'm on a radial of about 314 degrees, give or take, obviously owing to the inaccurate dials here. So what I'm going to do is I need to fly directly to the fix, because remember all the holding pattern entries begin with flying directly to the fix. So to fly directly to the fix, I need to fly the reciprocal of this radial that I'm on just now, which is about 154, 155 if we look at the opposite direction on the VOR indicator there. So what I'm going to do now is turn around 180 degrees. Now I might need to tweak this because obviously as we turn the radial is going to change slightly, but all I'm going to do is just kind of keep an eye on that using my VOR indicator here, and hopefully it doesn't change too much. So what we're doing just now is just getting ourselves into a position where we're flying directly to the fix, and that'll be like the first step of the holding pattern entry procedure there. So we're just coming around now. Almost there, about 20 more degrees to go. Okay, you can see that we've lost a couple of degrees on the radial there, but still about, so it's probably about 1.5. Let's just make it easy to make it a bit easier. Let's say 150. So we'll turn to a heading of 150. So now we're flying back directly towards the Inverness VOR. We're flying directly to the holding pattern fix. Now what I'm going to do is pause the simulator here so I can explain this next little bit in a bit more detail. So if we zoom in to our heading indicator here, now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to use that little hand trick, and I'm actually putting my hand up to the monitor right now, and I'm going to superimpose my hand onto the screen so you can see what I'm seeing right now. So what I do is I take my index finger, my pointy finger, and put it at the top of the heading indicator, and I draw that little angle between my thumb and my little finger. And you can remember it's about a 20-degree change. So what I'm going to do also is superimpose the little pod diagram that I showed you earlier. So you can see that on the left hand, like we've got our vertical line matches our heading of 150. The horizontal line will start at, it looks like here it'll be 040 degrees on the left there, and it goes over to around about 220 degrees there. So that gives us our three sectors there. We've got P on the left, O in the top right, and then D in the middle. Sorry, in the bottom there. So that kind of gives us a picture of our entry sectors, if that makes sense. Now, before I go any further, what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up the holding pattern and the approach chart again, so you can see the specific directions on the holding pattern. What we need is the reciprocal of the hold course. So let me explain. So if we have a look at the holding pattern here, you can see that the inbound leg, or the holding course, is 244 degrees. But remember that that is going towards the fix, so we need the reciprocal of that, which will be 064 degrees. And now if you have a look at the heading indicator again, and have a look at that POD, to find out which approach we need to fly, take the reciprocal of the hold course, so 064 degrees, and draw a line out to that. And you can see there that that line falls within our P, or our parallel entry sector. So now we know that when we hit the fix, we need to fly a parallel entry. I really hope that makes sense. As I said, it's quite a difficult procedure to get your head around at first, but this technique is honestly, it's the easiest one that I could find. So what you do from this point onwards now is simply fly towards the fix, and then do the parallel entry. So you would fly that reciprocal. So when you hit the fix, you would fly that reciprocal of 064 degrees for 1 minute, and then make a left-hand turn into the holding pattern, and then come back to the fix, and then start the holding pattern as normal. So just to recap that quickly, step by step. First, it's best to locate and fly directly to the fix. Once you're heading in the right direction, use the hand trick and the POD method to figure out where your entry sectors are. Next up, check your charts and find the reciprocal of the hold course. Then look at your heading indicator again, and then find the reciprocal heading and identify which entry sector it's in, so you know which entry technique to fly. Now that's what I just did in the video, step by step, but looking at it now, it might actually be worth swapping steps 2 and 3, so find the reciprocal heading of the holding pattern before using the hand and POD trick there. Now there's one last important thing that I would like to touch on quickly for holding pattern entries. Everything that I've explained and demonstrated in the video so far is for your standard right hand holding patterns. What do you do for left hand patterns? Thankfully, all of the procedures are the same, except they are mirrored for left hand patterns. So if we have a look at the entries for right and left hand patterns, you can see that you would fly them the exact same way, except for left hand patterns you'll be turning in the opposite direction. It's also the same for the POD and hand trick, except for left hand patterns you would use your left hand to replicate the POD diagram. It's also worth noting that on that diagram your parallel and offset entry sectors have swapped sides for the left hand patterns there. So that about covers everything that I can think of for holding pattern entries. As I said, it's a very tough procedure to get your head around, but give it a couple of tries and you should be able to get it. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask away in the comments. And also, if you'd like me to do a follow-up video and fully demonstrate each of the techniques, let me know and I'll be more than happy to, as I kind of need practice on them myself and to get them kind of memorized properly. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, take care out there, and I will catch you all later.